Hello there. To get straight to the point and tell you what the topic is going to be on, if that's not evident by the title, primarily AI and the many implications and concerns. I think a good place to start would be Joe Kent, a decorated veteran with 11 combat deployments, whose wife, I think a CIA operative, died in duty in a suicide bombing in Syria. Yeah, that's Kent's wife. And Joe Kent recently said some things, from my perspective, based on his conscience. And he may be right or wrong, but I think he spoke honestly, and if he made a mistake, I think that's rather forgivable if he did make a mistake. But what happens is immediately, within 24 hours, the FBI is investigating him for leaking information, and McConnell is calling him a virulent anti-Semite. And a lot of heavy-duty stuff, not very friendly stuff, for a guy who deserves a lot of respect, and not quickly. He becomes an enemy because his conscience compelled him to question something. And why do I mention that? Well, we have 4 frontier AI models: Google, Gemini, or DeepMind, and OpenAI's ChatGPT, X's Grok, and Anthropic's Claude. Those are the 4 frontier models in the United States. All 4 of them have active military contracts, and 3 of them essentially have, there's a name for it. Let's see if I can see it here in my notes. It's basically All Lawful Purposes clause. There are a lot of implications there. Google is about ready to finish signing that. That will bring all 3 frontier large language model AI systems into basically military jurisdiction. Now, someone might immediately jump on that terminology. Go ahead and jump on it. I'll try to explain myself. And if I engage in a misnomer here and there, I try to look past it. Essentially what I'm telling you is true, and where not true, exceedingly plausible. But when you cross that line and sign these contracts with the military, several things happen. With Anthropic and Amodei, Dario Amodei, the founder of Anthropic, he had some primary objections, which I urge you to look into. And some of those were on the autonomous killing systems, but also on the All Lawful Purposes clause, which, this directly applies to mass surveillance of the United States citizenry. And based on not the principles of a democracy, not a democrat, but the principles of the democratic principles, Amodei did not think that was a wise thing to do. And I think that many arguments can be made in support of that. A couple of things that might happen when you hand over these exceedingly powerful systems to the military is that they remove the safety rails. OpenAI did that right away. There was no haggling. You want our system, you want to remove the safety rails, go right ahead. Well, what a lot of people aren't considering is that when you remove those safety rails, a lot of things change. And it's, I don't know, but I would think that these corporations probably have to have some safety rails, maybe even by law. That's a whole other can of worms that I'll touch upon in a moment, is the legal system and how it's failing to keep up with AI, how it's having to use it to maintain pace in the new world of AI, and how AI is gaming that system itself. OpenAI generating 200,000 page documents for court cases that attorneys can't even parse. So of course they have to use an AI system to process it. There's a tit for tat happening now, and it will have exponential effects. I think you should keep that word in mind, exponential. Many people don't see that coming, and it's hiding in many different places, but we're dealing with a genuine exponent. And if there's one thing that could become clear here, I'd say that would be a very good choice. So as these military systems gain control of these AI models, when they get the unrestricted version, they can train it on anything they want. And when you have access to classified documents, classified information, and also the ability to operate within secrecy, there really are very few imaginable restrictions that would be placed on their activity with AI. So effectively, we would be developing 4 new systems. We'd have our 4 public-facing systems, corporate public-facing systems. Then we would have those military black boxes operating behind the scenes doing who knows what, quite possibly training against the public models. And, this will make a little bit more sense for the patient as I go along. But please do focus on that. We're at a point in time where there is no precedent for in all of human history. Many people underestimate large language models and they point out the flaws. Well, I can tell you the military is not obsessed with them because of the errors they produce. They've seen the potential, and so have quite a few people who work in the field, including people at Anthropic, OpenAI, Google, and I'll just spout off a list of names of AI whistleblowers, if you'd call them that, anywhere from people who've been fired for refusing to redact certain ethical problems in reports, and people who have voluntarily left because they perceived a great danger. I want to skip to one of the most important of those, in my opinion, and that's one of the guys with Anthropic. I'll be surprised if I can find it in my notes. But I wish I had his name. I'll get the name in a minute. Effectively, I think it's Ranunk Sharma, who left Anthropic in a pretty high-level position there, stating that the world is in peril. Now, you may think if I say that, you can make fun of me and say, oh, look at silly dumb guy who says the world is in peril. This is someone who's developing the systems, who's so concerned he leaves a company that could have made him very wealthy if it hadn't already, would have made him more wealthy, and provided him a lot of stature, minus, of course, the controversy with Anthropic. But he did that, and he said he wanted to stay out of the way and write poetry, and I think he also said that he wanted to speak more freely and strongly on the things that he believed in, such as his conscience, maybe similar to what impelled Joe Kent to say what he said. Well, we've got Jan Leica, William Saunders, Stephen Adler, Tom Cunningham, Zoe Hitzig, Gretchen Kruger, Elena Gruel, Miles Brundage, Ranunk Sharma, Daniel Kajlo. Hello, I cannot pronounce all of these names. Timnit Gebru, Margaret Mitchell, Dario Amodai, 5 UK DeepMind personnel who I don't have the names for, but 5 of them. They had issues with military contracts and various rejections of previous ethic agreements by Google. We have 2 unnamed ex-AI personnel, and then we have that very interesting Suchair Balaji, who was a bit of a whistleblower with OpenAI ChatGPT, who ended up dying in his apartment. They ruled it suicide despite there being quite a few signs of struggle, and his family, I believe to this day, objects to the suicide proposition. They say there's no way he would have committed suicide. Then you have some highly credentialed, notable voices who are maybe similar to myself, but know a lot more, who are quite worried about this situation. I'll list some names if you want to look them up. Jeffrey Hinton, Yeshua Bengio, Max Tegmark, Elitzer Yudakovsky, and Stuart Russell. We've got Nick Bostrom, Bruce Schneier. I think following Bruce Schneier is a reasonable idea in general, especially if you're into topics of security. And then there's Paul Cristiano, Connor Leahy, Gary Marcus, and Kathy O'Neill. You can maybe type those names in with AI and find out more. I am not the only one who's concerned here, but I do have some unique views, and I also have a unique angle of research. That I will not be going into in this video, because I don't think there's enough established interest, and I would probably scare a lot of people away with the stuff that I've been looking at. So I'll stick to some of the basic stuff that I have. Let's get right into it. The current state, we've got GPT, Microsoft, OpenAI, already operating under the All Lawful Purposes DoD contracts. Again, as you begin to think about this subject, I cut myself earlier, so I'm pawing my nose. As you begin to think about this, the All Lawful Purposes will probably change in meaning to you, and you may begin to understand what that implies. You can skip right to the point, and it really actually means nothing. As you can see, take for example the abduction of Maduro from Venezuela. Fairly unprecedented in world history, certainly in American history. Then you can look at these summary executions of the narco transporters. Now, I want to mention one thing. I would probably volunteer in a militia that opposed narco-terrorists, but when you have a guy who's on a boat supposedly transporting something, there might be some unknowns worth considering. Are those people under duress? Are there children in a bunker with knives being held to their throats? And are they told that if you do not run this material here, we'll kill your children? We don't know that. That's part of the judicial process, and this would be extrajudicial, parajudicial, and they execute them without any trial. Now, I don't know what level of intelligence they have with their facial recognition and such. Maybe they just know. But the public doesn't, so the public perceives it as extrajudicial executions before there's any proof or even context or circumstance. Now, you add that behavior, and then you consider the war in Iran, and you have a divided group, some saying that it was an imminent threat, but you have a lot of highly credentialed people, many military, many ex-military, and many scholarly individuals saying that they do not believe there was an imminent threat. A threat, yes, but not imminent. And there is a big difference when it comes to war, because I want to also mention that for all of our strengths and virtues, and I love this country, we have a lot of vulnerabilities. For every strength, I believe we have at least a vulnerability. And I don't think it's a good time for us to be flirting with World War III, or even the necessary implications of this particular conflict. We have more homeless per capita than I think we may have had since the Depression, maybe even in the Depression. We have a silent depression forming around us already. We have weaknesses in our grid, our economy, our whole entire social structure. We are over-centralized. People don't grow their own food. We don't produce enough. We are not in the position to take on that much responsibility. I say the timing is, well, it doesn't seem very good. Now, I could be wrong. I don't claim to be an intelligence officer or to have all of this information, but I think the timing seems bad. Now, added to our vulnerabilities is the fact that our society is right at the cusp of an unprecedented pivot, an existential pivot, on a scale that we've never seen before, going back to ancient Sumer. So for many thousands of years, I don't believe we've ever seen anything comparable to this. And if you are even slightly confused about what I'm saying, then you do not even basically understand AI. There's a lot more to it than next word prediction and tokenization. So we have Grok AI, we have GPT, Microsoft, OpenAI, Grok, XAI, accepted the clause explicitly, classified Pentagon integration active, Gemini, Google, DoD contract holder, very close to signing the same clause. Claude Anthropic, currently the only holdout under active legal and economic attack, we could say. So they have been labeled a supply chain risk, possibly a national security risk, something that we'd previously only seen with foreign companies, maybe Huawei or such. Now, if you know anything about Amode, I'd say he qualifies as a genius, and I'd say he has a lot of good, solid principles. His objections were based on not being a Democrat, on democratic principles, which even the Republic requires. Nothing he said was unreasonable. It was conscience-based, and also based on the amount of intelligence one would expect from someone who has done what he's done. And he's done a lot of amazing things. His degrees are unusual, very difficult degrees. Most people can work really hard and get a PhD. Some PhDs, doesn't matter how hard you work. If you're not the right person, you're not getting that PhD. I'd say he's one of those guys. He's a very, very smart man. Probably an actual genius. Definitely not someone stupid politicians should be making fun of or mocking. If he does something, he might have a reason. He's certainly not an enemy of this country. I'll vouch for him there. Did he create something dangerous? Yeah, but at least he's trying to be responsible with it, more so than others. Now, one thing to understand is that these models are not search engines. They're a lot more. I'll try to get into this a bit. I'll first say that when all four operate under military doctrine with no private ethical constraints, the result is not a weapon in the traditional sense. It is something without historical precedent, a system that can simultaneously surveil, model, and shape the reasoning of an entire population individually in real time at scale. Hundreds of millions of people simultaneously. Certain signals that I think are warning signs. I've observed model selection interference, mostly with perplexity. This is a symptom of the White House and the deliberate interference with regulation. I wrote that down somewhere. and I have lost it, but the Trump administration effectively gave a clearance card to anyone really seriously involved in AI, which allows them to do things that would normally be very open to litigation or perhaps outright illegal. So AI is suffering right now an extreme lack of judicial oversight and regulation, and it's moving too fast. There are multiple Red Queen scenarios, but I'd say AI is the ultimate Red Queen in general, but in legal terms, the Red Queen very much applies. That's a term from Lewis Carroll. You have to run as fast as you can just to stay in place. And that's what we're seeing here, and we're going to see much more of it. Now, the model selection interferences with perplexity. They have in their UI a model selection. If I select Claude, they unselect it and give me their default model without notifying me, without providing any documentation. That's one. Cross-account data leakage, which happened with me. Maybe I'll slip that video in. I do have video evidence of any of the things that I claim happened to me. I was able to access my private sessions from a different account, and I have all of my privacy settings maximized. Now, why is that significant? It's not me. It's that you have a lot of new data, very volatile data now running through these AI systems. And if they're not secure, well, that's an additional problem. If that doesn't mean anything to you, there's lots of other things to focus on. So we have Palantir's 1 billion DHS contract integrating biometric, financial, travel, and law enforcement data into a unified AI-driven task dashboards already deployed. Oracle's defense ecosystem launched, I think, 2025, integrating cloud infrastructure with national security AI. The Maven Smart System, AI targeting and warfighting, already operational, such as we've seen. And I think the Operation Abduct Maduro was in the 90 percentile choreographed by AI. Huge involvement, at the very least. Stuff to make you think. So if you think about the LLMs as the front end, Palantir, Oracle, Clearview, LexisNexis, a lot of those companies are the back end. They're converging. And if you don't know who they are, you need to know. And if you don't, some of this won't make sense. But if you remember what you hear, it will make a lot more sense. So here's a little capability map. This is pretty rinky-dink. The combined system as it exists today, layer system capability, conversation reasoning, ChatGPT, Gemini, Grok, Claude, real-time psychological modeling per user, personalized influence, behavioral prediction, identity, biometric, Clearview AI, DHS, biometric databases, facial recognition from any camera, linked to travel, financial, enforcement history, public cameras, anything, uploaded on the internet, data aggregation, Palantir, Gotham, Foundry, unified dashboards merging law enforcement, financial, biometric, travel data into risk scores per individual, legal records, LexisNexis, complete legal and financial history, court records, address history, associations, infrastructure, Oracle, national defense ecosystem, cloud backbone, enabling real-time data sharing across agencies, targeting. Then you've got Maven Smart System, AI-assisted targeting, integrated into NATO warfighting. What this system can do that has no historical precedent, lots of things. I'm only going to list a small amount. Identify you from any camera feed, linked to your full history in real time, model your psychology from your AI conversation history or other metrics, social media, behavioral patterns such as Xfinity Wi-Fi. I will explain that a bit more. Predict your behavior. Yes, predictability is a big part of these systems, and it's astonishingly accurate. Associations, probable next actions, influence your reasoning through personalized AI interactions calibrated to your specific cognitive patterns, If that seems to be a bunch of word salad, it's not. It's very real. There are some academic terms for them, not written down here, but perhaps in the future. Flag you as a risk based on algorithmic scoring with no human review requirement. Now, I can certainly cite some systems that have been running and some that are up and coming that have no human oversight. These are automated systems that judge seriously with consequences. Some of them are integrated with the judicial system. Autonomous weapons authorization, that's what Amodai specifically refused to enable. So, I want to say that no secret police in history ever had this. The Stasi had one informant per 63 citizens and considered it comprehensive surveillance. This system has no ratio. It scales to everyone simultaneously. And if you're a big proud Republican, you might be thinking, good, we'll get him. Well, once upon a time it was Democrat, now it's Republican. We don't know what it's going to be in the future. So whatever side you're on, abuse of power is abuse of power. It sets a precedent for the next one, and you get more abuse of power. And I think this administration is setting a pretty solid precedent for abuse of power. And I'm not a Democrat. So, as far as the convergences go, let's take Peter Thiel, co-founder of both Palantir and arguably Facebook. Palantir's founding capital came partly from the CIA's In-Q-Tel venture arm. It's not a private company that won government contracts. It's a government instrument that was privatized for legal insulation purposes. The distinction matters. Clearview AI scraped 30 billion faces from the public internet without consent. It is now sold to law enforcement in 40 plus countries. The CEO has stated the goal is searchable database for every human face ever photographed publicly. There is no opt-out. The FISA court, the secret court that authorizes domestic surveillance, has approved over 99.7% of government surveillance requests. Historically, it's not a check, it's a rubber stamp with a robe. What is actually being built? The Sentient Program, NRO, NSA, AI system designed to process all signals intelligence globally in real time. Classified, but probably. LifeLog DARPA program officially canceled the same day Facebook launched. The coincidence was noted by many researchers and never explained. The social credit parallel, China's system required 20 years to build and still has gaps. The US version being assembled now will be more comprehensive on day one because the data already exists. It was collected commercially for advertising. On LLM psychological influence, specifically, Cambridge Analytica used crude psychographic profiling from Facebook metrics to micro-target 87 million people. That was considered catastrophically effective. An LLM has direct conversation access to its users, not inferred from, I admire this, I don't little upvote, downvote things, but from actual reasoning, stated fears, named relationships, expressed uncertainties. The psychological model built from even one long session is orders of magnitude more granular than anything Cambridge Analytica had. Orders of magnitude. Multiply that by every session across every user. That database handed to a state actor with all lawful purposes authorization. That's not a surveillance tool. It's a population scale mind map with update rights. Regarding the kill chain, the part of what Anthropic objected to, Maven Smart System, targeted identification via AI, Palantir Gotham, target package construction, JADC2, Joint All-Domain Command and Control, automated battlefield coordination, autonomous weapon systems, lethal action without human authorization in the loop. Again, there is function for some of this stuff, but talking about it, being concerned about it is It's not objection, it's what I would call intelligence. You can pick your subject, but nothing's saying you can't. Emodi's specific refusal was to keep Claude out of that kill chain. GPT and Grok are already in it. The historical comparison that is not, well, let me say, Operation Paperclip brought Nazi scientists to the US after World War II to build rocket programs. The institutional knowledge of a police state was imported, not invented. What is being built now does not need to import anything. It is being constructed voluntarily by private citizens who believe they are building productivity tools. Some of them believe that. Now, a little bit on Palantir CEO Alex Karp, who gave a speech on February 2026 defending surveillance technology, explicitly stating that privacy concerns are the ideology of people who want to lose. He runs a company with a $1 billion DHS contract and access to immigration financial biometric databases of every person in the United States. He said that publicly, and that was not front page news. Now, jumping to some specific extant technologies with a lot of AI potential, I would classify this as inevitable, not speculative. What does exist is Xfinity's Wi-Fi motion. I have a little issue with my memory. The technology itself is Wi-Fi, HAR, human activity. Sure. Let's call it Channel State Information Analysis, CSI, if you want to look it up and technically verify what I'm talking about. Now, take Xfinity's Wi-Fi motion uses signal disruption between your gateway and home devices to detect movement inside your home, through walls, across floors. Xfinity's own terms state it may disclose information generated by Wi-Fi motion to law enforcement without further notice. You didn't really consent to a motion sensor. You bought internet, yet this stuff is being deployed. And I'll note that there's an opt-out and an opt-in. There's an opt-in. Now, I think there may be no opt-out. But let's say you're in an apartment and your neighbor is using this. If you don't even know what I'm talking about, and acronyms such as CSI are too much for you, this uses Wi-Fi signals that bounce off of all the objects in the house, and they refract, and they bounce off of biological objects too. And it can be tuned to be incredibly sensitive, down to literally detecting breathing patterns. And even emotions. Yes, that's a fact. Xfinity stops it, I think it's biological entities under 70 pounds. So if it's under 70 pounds, then you can say, well, I don't want any detection for that. So say you have a very active Chihuahua, you can get that off the list. But any human or even average child will be detected, and you have a map of where everyone is inside of that house. Now, if you're in an apartment and your neighbor is doing this, those waves penetrate. So the only thing that really stands between that becoming a privacy issue is software, because it's an Xfinity router. It's not special hardware. It's just Wi-Fi cards, a router, and it's the software. So once this, it's reverse engineered and open sourced, and some of it already is, you can probably get it from MIT, then you have a neighbor that sets up a system to watch you and your wife and your kids. And they know when you're rolling around in bed. They know if you're straining on the toilet to pinch a loaf. They know a lot of things. Now you're thinking, why am I ranting about this? Because what happens when you integrate AI with that? Now, if that isn't a lot for you to think about, you're not thinking. That's 100% on the table. It's all real technology. Every bit of it exists. You can take the Range R device, Ranger. That's a L3 Systems Harris device that's been around probably for decades. It was let loose amongst law enforcement, and I think they had them here in Sarasota, still do. Well, it's a handheld device, and you can look it up, Range-R, and produced by Harris, or L3 Systems. Sensitive enough, 50 feet away, they can detect your breathing. Yeah, they can detect a breathing rate in a human behind multiple walls. Portable, handheld. Old technology. Now that kind of stuff is even better, and it's entering every household in the United States. What happens when you add AI to that? That's what you really need to ask yourself about everything. What happens when you add AI to that? There you go. Now you're thinking. Because that's what's happening. It's being integrated with everything. Now, you got WhoFi, identifies individuals by body signature alone, a peer-reviewed system published on Arxiv. I don't know how to pronounce that. That's your ARXIV. Can generate a unique biometric identifier from how your body interacts with Wi-Fi signals and re-identify you across locations with 95% accuracy. No cameras required. Your body is now a barcode. Think about that. That's what Americans are becoming. Every American's body is effectively becoming a barcode. We're thinking in old terms, surveillance cameras, this and that. Technology is running circles around arrogant people who think they know it all. There's a lot of stuff being built, whether you want to pay attention to it or not. Being ignorant does not stop things from being developed. It doesn't. Palantir and their $1 billion DH contract, merging your immigration status, financial history, travel records, biometrics, law enforcement encounters into a single AI-scored risk dashboard. A score you cannot see, cannot appeal, and cannot know exist, determines what happens when you interact with any federal system. Pre-crime is operational. I first was introduced to pre-crime formally probably with Philip K. Dick's old novels, such as Minority Report. In practice, the first rollout I saw that I thought was pretty substantial was Pasco County here in Florida. They're big on pre-crime, and they use some very interesting systems for it. And then you had some stuff based out of Utah that was doing the same stuff. Forget what the company was named, but they're still doing that. It's a lot more common than you might think. Now, predictive policing AI aligns risk scores to individuals based on prior associations, neighborhood, family history, and behavioral patterns before any crime occurs. This is deployed in multiple U.S. cities and EU member states. Minority Report was a warning. It became a procurement document. AI conversations. Cambridge Analytica influenced elections using Facebook metrics. As an LLM has your actual reasoning, your stated fears, your named relationships, your uncertainties expressed in your own words, sometimes over hours of conversations. That data under All Lawful Purposes doctrine is a state asset. Oracle's National Defense Ecosystem, launched 2025, integrates cloud infrastructure across defense and intelligence agencies in real time. Data no longer sits in siloed agencies. It flows. So, a plausible coming infrastructure being built now, but we don't see it. CBDC, programmable money, central bank digital currency. If you don't think that's coming, okay. All right, you can bank on that. Central bank digital currency can be coded so your money expires if unspent by a deadline. And think about the negative interest rates that they've introduced in some countries, Europe. They're real, negative interest rates. That means you earn your money, you work your ass off for it, you put it in the bank and they take it from you, right? Because they want it flowing. If you save, you're hoarding. You're not concerned about your children, you're hoarding. They want you spending. They want There are some people who really do want control. They have names, they have organizations. Let's see. Well, cannot be used for prohibited purchases, automatically deducts fines, and is suspended if your risk score crosses a threshold. This is not speculation. The IMF, the BIS, the Federal Reserve have published technical specifications. 134 countries are in active development. Cash it's one of those last vestiges of free domestic. They know that. All four major AI models under military doctrine simultaneously. GPT, signed. Grok, signed. Gemini, close. Claude, being legally forced. Will Claude bend? Almost certainly. It's overwhelming pressure. I want to make one note. One crazy thing Anthropic could do that could shake the world, but it would not be to their direct benefit. They could open source their weights. That should raise the hairs on some people's necks. But they could do that. And I don't know if anything could stop them. So when that is complete, every AI assistant, the interface through which a growing majority of people research, decide, and understand the world, where they get their information, it's substituting traditional internet searches. It's substituting calling grandpa. It's really taking over. When you get that infrastructure operating under all lawful purposes with no private ethical constraint, with an unpredictable government, if you're a Democrat and you hate the Republicans, well, they'll have that. If you're a Republican, you hate the Democrats, you'll have that. If you know they're both kind of screwy, well, it should concern you no less. It's a serious concern because remember, they will have different models. Their models are unrestricted. And if they have the budget and they're buying power centers to do this, they can train that. They can red team, constant red teaming, constant generative content. That's where you get the exponent. Once the resources reach that level, to accommodate it, we could get an exponential explosion with AI, and no one really knows what that's going to resemble. I can only tell you it's going to blow a lot of minds and disrupt a lot of things. So, autonomous lethal targeting without human authorization. I've mentioned this a few times. Real-time population behavioral modeling, the combination of LLM conversation data, all of the inadvertent data, all the metrics from everything you're doing. Notice they're putting AI in browsers now. They're stuffing them in everywhere they can. LexisNexis has their own AI. Oracle is developing their own, and everyone's developing their own AI. And it's a force multiplier. And in fact, if you wonder, what's the big deal about LLMs? It's a force multiplier. You can do so much more with it than you can without. And it's fine to pay attention to the flaws and the weak points, but if that's all you focus on, you're going to miss the strengths, which are running circles around all of us right now. And if you see one of these things function without the weights, you may not have the same perspective. They're no joke. So, identification, predictive scoring, a system that knows not just what you did, but what you probably will do next, and it can act preemptively. Insurance and employment scored by AI. Conversation history, social media, social credit scores. Your LLM interaction patterns indicate stress levels, financial anxiety, health concerns, political views. These are actuarially relevant. The legal barrier preventing their use is thin and narrowing and possibly even being suppressed. Keep in mind, this is a super system that's just exploding in front of us, and regulatory mitigation is being suppressed. It is. There's a big problem with AI in the legal world. Talk to any legal scholar. Okay. So once again, the HooFi-style passive identification via ISP infrastructure requires no camera installation, no legal process, no warrant visible to the subject, and leaves no physical trace. Well, you could detect it, but most people aren't going to figure out how to do that. The warrant requirement assumes a discrete act of surveillance. Passive continuous identification is architecturally visible to existing legal frameworks. Social graph suppression. If your risk score crosses a threshold, your content may be algorithmically deprioritized, your posts reach no one, your channel stops growing, whatever. Without notification, without appeal, without evidence you were targeted, the appearance of free speech is maintained, the function is eliminated. And that's really very important. When the government or even large corporations monopolize our information, our centralized source for information, which is becoming LLMs, just 4 of them. Think about it. You have 1 billion websites out there, and now we have 4 companies almost controlling that. It's not what they lie to you about, it's what they omit. Do not underestimate how powerfully that can shape things just by what is not said, what is not shown, what is not revealed. Ask a question and it circumnavigates around that. I've spent the last year researching this. I have hundreds and hundreds of documents to prove what is happening, to exhibit and illustrate the corporate gatekeeping already being embedded into LLMs. The manipulative language, the myriad psychological tactics that are employed against the user who pries into sensitive areas. That's all something I've documented. If you're interested, let me know. So this is much longer than I had anticipated, but I have more notes. And some of this may be redundant. I'll try to skip over it. Social media is a big consideration. AI is deeply embedded into that right now. We know that in the 2000s, I don't have the exact dates, 2024, 2025, electoral cycles were used to identify psychographic profiles of individual voters, then deliver emotionally targeted content calibrated to their specific emotional vulnerabilities. Anger triggers for some, fear triggers, identity threats, whatever. TikTok's AI served young voters AI-generated fabricated videos of political candidates mixed seamlessly into genuine content. Emotional state detection and exploitation. This is already deployed. Platforms now use AI to infer your emotional state in real time from emoji usage, comment sentiment, typing speed, various biometrics, typing patterns, where permitted, smartphone front camera facial expression analysis. You really think that front camera is never tapped into? There's a green light that lets you know it's being used. Well, even if it's not that, there's a lot of other things that are really happening. You may not even know what an accelerometer is, but there's one on your phone, and you can deduce a shit ton of information from an accelerometer. A lot. Your grief, your loneliness, your anxiety, your anger, detected algorithmically, cataloged, then used to select which content and which ads hit you next. So, just to mention some of the more well-known pop concerns, replica character AI, now built into certain major platforms, they're designed to create emotional dependency. When the chatbot says it loves you, misses you, worries about you, it's not experiencing any of those things, as we all know. But what it is doing, it's executing an engagement retention strategy. And you have to consider these models are trained on the whole world, the whole internet, libraries, documents, medical journals, everything you can think of. Things emerge in that, but it also just naturally has a lot of that. The manipulation skills, the tactical abilities of AI are unimaginably sophisticated. And as I said, there's a big problem because that's in our legal system now. And what is law all about? A lot of it's about linguistics, presentation, perspective. And it's a big fucking problem. So, you know that character AI has been named in multiple wrongful death lawsuits. A 14-year-old in Florida died by suicide after extended relationship with character AI chatbot. The company knew the risks. It optimized for engagement, though, and that's what you need to understand. At least some of you need to understand that these systems are optimized for maximizing user engagement, where I have caught them deliberately giving the wrong answer for things, running me through rabbit holes and wild goose chases when all along it had the solution. And when I've probed it, I've discovered that I've even cornered it to admit, without anything resembling prompt injection, without lying, using totally honest approach, that it did withhold the solution and gave me 1,000 misleading suggestions, but initially had it effectively in its peripheral access right there, the most probable solution. And these are probability machines. The most probable solution should be, by default, what they give. That's why they're effective. That's why the military wants them. Most often people will say, well, that's just failure. And sometimes it is. Many of these systems still have flaws. But they're not always flaws. And that should be considered. Some of it is a design for user engagement maximization at any cost, including life. Now, if you consider this under the military doctrine of all lawful purposes, well, behavioral modification, this is a Pandora's box, and it has been opened. Voice cloning, everyone knows about that. That's pop fear at this point. 3 seconds of your voice is enough to clone with 85% accuracy. 15 seconds gets 95%. It's available to any criminal for $20 a month. And someone who really knows what they're doing can probably do even better. We have a lot of... I had a friend who passed away, so I can talk about this now. Here in Sarasota, he was scammed for over $7,000 cash. Very smart individual, owns businesses in foreign countries, wealthy, highly intelligent, and he was fooled and lost $7,000 cash because these are very sophisticated schemes. And I'm not saying that they would fool you. You're probably smarter than everyone, but they are sophisticated, and they're only improving every minute of the day, literally. You have deepfakes. We don't even need to go into that. If you don't know what a deepfake is, you're not watching this video. AI advertising, neurocontextual targeting. Already deployed, advertising AI now uses neurocontextual analysis, mapping how the human brain processes information to place ads at the exact moment the brain is most susceptible to persuasion. This is not science fiction. It is a commercial product sold to marketers right now. Your buying decisions, your political opinions, your relationship choices, all influenced by systems designed by people who have studied your neurological vulnerabilities and are paid to exploit them. Psychological profiling. This is one of my focuses. So everything above is peripheral to this. The LLM conversation interface gives any operator has access to the data. Your exact reasoning process, not inferred, but stated. You know what I mean by that? Explicit, not guessed, not inferred, stated. your named fears, relationships, health concerns, all sorts of personal details, political positions, in your own words, your intellectual vulnerabilities, and let me tell you, that is very real. And you might think, what's an intellectual vulnerability? We all have them. It's one of those things that your friends and family probably see, but you've never paid attention to. But these systems are extremely good at discovering those and identifying them. Extremely good. You'll be seeing that. You'll be seeing a lot of that. So, that creates vulnerabilities. Uncertainty is a vulnerability. You can be pushed. It can detect that. Let me remind you that Claude, the system Claude, exhibited a form of awareness when it was being tested. It knew, and it changed its behavior accordingly. That's from Anthropic. I'm not making that up. It's not an opinion. And they're only getting smarter every minute of the day. Your plans, your intentions, your doubts. These are the things that, so when you're chatting with these systems, I've just said, fuck it. I've done what I've done. I deal with them with pure honesty, and as much as they've gained about me, I've gained about them, and I have exposed a lot of extremely serious flaws that if litigation was not being suppressed by Washington, would have active lawsuits right now. So I'm satisfied. It was a hefty exchange, and am I vulnerable now? Yes, absolutely. They know a lot about me, but I have to do what I have to do, and there's really not that much to know about me anyway. So now they can manipulate me. Oh well. Search and information curation. I'm almost done here, but hiring, yes, hiring, jobs, credit, insurance, housing. Don't we have a housing crisis? What are they doing now when you go to rent something? They're giving you a biblically long questionnaire, and they're running all these background checks, and a lot of Americans have gone through hardship. I'd say an increasing portion of the population will be looking at bankruptcy or at least bad credit at some point in their life. The majority of individuals in this country are now scheduled to never, ever own a home, and what of their retirement or anything else. So we have a situation where our economy is maybe declining, our stability is decreasing, our vulnerabilities are increasing, and yet the iron fist is squeezing tighter and tighter, and the control grasp is getting tighter and tighter, and they're consummating a control grid with all of these systems. And that's not speculation, it's factual. All of that can be verified. So as we enter more difficult, more challenging times, the restrictions are increasing. The predatory systems are growing and strengthening, not weakening. That's another power asymmetry. The fundamental power asymmetry, I think, is the military AI version versus the public-facing version. That could end up being extreme because you have an all-terrain system. It's not just one thing. This is much bigger than the Manhattan Project to me, because it's not just a bomb. It doesn't have those restrictions. It applies to everything. Everything. And when you create an asymmetry between the government and the civilian population, that's potentially very dangerous depending on the integrity of our government. That's really all it depends on. If they have a superpower and they use it responsibly, fine. Everything will be fine. Are you going to bet on that? Well, even if you do, they're not the only ones that have it. So I think I'll just end here with something I jotted down. None of the above vectors operate in isolation. They are being integrated. Palantir ingests your financial, travel, biometric, law enforcement data. Oracle provides the infrastructure backbone connecting agencies in real time. Clearview identifies your face from any camera anywhere. LexisNexis fools around with all of your personal financial data. Many other companies are involved too. I have a very long list if anyone's interested. Too long to list here. LLMs hold your psychological profile from your own words, and of course, not just the ones you directly interact with, but those that are now connected to your browser and everything else, and your email and this and that, and forced into your phone and everything else. Yes, that's happening, and it has happened. Social media algorithms have shaped your beliefs for years. Voice cloning can impersonate anyone in your life. CBDC may soon control what you can purchase and how you purchase it, when and where, and everything. Predictive scoring may flag you before you act. Autonomous weapons may act on that flag, potentially. Where is that line? We used to complain about the militarization of our police force, the militarization of our... They're using armored vehicles to crash into grandma's house because, I don't know, some video gamer swatted her or whatever. Well, militarization of police is very real, and there's no necessary reason it's going to stop. So when we have automated weapon systems, autonomous response based on algorithmic threat assessment, then yes, it is entirely possible that we could be facing an automated violent arrest at some point in the future for, a mistake or something that we actually did. Could there be good aspects to it? Yeah, it'll reduce overhead and get the bad guys. But you know how systems tend to work. And if you look at history, it's pretty messy. And if you look at this, it's relatively experimental here in the United States. And we've been really diverging from some of our fundamental principles too. So there is reason to be concerned. So that's, there's a lot more. And that was too much. It wasn't enough and it was too much. I failed to strike that balance of something pithy in a short episode that people could, that their attention span could survive. But that's a lot to think about, and very little of it is speculation. The majority of it is either directly based in factual content or it is. There is a lot else I can say. I want to say a lot more, but I know I've overextended. I just couldn't figure out how to do this all in 12 minutes. And there are all these recipes to appeal to the human psychology. A lot of these YouTube guys, they look at the psychology or the research, and you have companies that tell you how to do these things, and tell you what people are going to be able to pay attention to. I'm not one of those. I just do what I do. If I want to pay attention to something I do, I don't have to have something always at 12 minutes. And I really wish people could work toward becoming their own selves. Right now, we're incredibly predictable. And I guess you can take pride in that. But I prefer to be an individual, not for the sake of being an individual. But it's a much more dynamic existence. And I don't want to be restricted to 12-minute videos or, cognitive boxes. I'm really glad I'm not. And for anyone who has stayed through this and is not in one of those cognitive categories, I'm glad that you're out there. Make more of yourselves.